Now they tell me. It probably won't surprise you too, that those films came from all around the world. More than 3/4 of them were in languages other than English. And almost all of them were made outside of the Hollywood mainstream. I think Gale was drawn to those films, partly because, as so many of you said, she so much loved to travel, especially to places she didn't already know. And these films allowed her to travel vicariously at a time when COVID wouldn't make it possible. I think she also liked the films because she was such a fan of complex storytelling. And frankly, the further you get away from Hollywood, the better you get close to complex storytelling, especially if we could throw in the added angle of new cultural complexity. I'd like to think she also enjoyed the conversations. I know I do enormously. But it's very important to say before I finish that this kind of film watching was not the most important film watching for Gale. And I was not the most important person she enjoyed filming. What she told me quite a few times was that the film watching that mattered most to her was getting together with Sharon, immersing themselves in TV films from home. And Sharon, you should correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but what I remember her saying is what she loved about those films, sharing them with Sharon, is that it only took about 10 to 15 minutes to work out how the films would end. But then there was this enormous pleasure in working their way through the films and seeing all their predictions being confirmed. And that's not necessarily the pleasure I got from movie watching, but it's one I can readily understand. In fact, I think I can say with some confidence, based on what Gale told me, that these were among the happiest moments of her life. Except perhaps going to Santa with you, getting to sit on Santa's lap. So maybe we all contain multitudes, but what made Gale so extraordinary for me, and what made me so grateful to know her, was that she could pull so many different elements together and somehow make them all mesh. She was the atheist who loved Christmas. She was the Hallmark fan who loved some of the most complicated movie making in the world. She also did it without any pretense or posture. Everything was down to earth and direct, as many of you have said. So she kept expanding her experiences. She kept expanding the reach of friendships. She kept bringing people together so that they could connect better. I was going to end with a particular line, but part of the pleasure of being here has been conversations I've been having. And out of those conversations emerged a line I've used before, but it's not an insight really, but we're all bundles of relationships, each of us. And we're all defined by the quality of the relationships we're in. And getting to meet some of you that I've never met before gives me an even better sense of why Gale is so wonderful. Thank you.
Michelle, I just want to say that initially Gale thought Hallmark movies were really stupid. But I love Hallmark movies, and my friends Gray and Tammy from Kansas City love Hallmark movies. So we would always watch Hallmark movies, and Gale would come to visit me. And I said, we're going to watch a Hallmark movie. She'd be like, oh my God. Well, then after we watched several of them, and we watched some with you too, then she came like the next year. She goes, are we going to watch Hallmark movies? And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. You know? And so she and I don't have a television at home, but I have a laptop and could pull up the Hallmark movies. I had the Hallmark channel. And so we'd go climb in bed and get under the covers with all the pillows And we would turn on a Hallmark movie and watch them, and then, we'd finish a movie, but they just kept running, right? People went from 5 to 7, 7 to 9, 9 to 12. And at 9 o'clock, she go, "Are you gonna watch the movie?" I go, "No, we're going to bed." That's it, we're done. But yeah, she got totally hooked on Hallmark movies. And I had to say, and then last year, we got emails that Hallmark was gonna do a Hallmark movie cruise. Emails me, "I think we should go." I said, "I do too. Let's go." And so we had to apply, to go. So
Like
long
sold
story
out in an
short,
hour.
it's sold out.
Done.
Yeah, we never got an opportunity to even get on the boat. And then they did another boat, a second boat. We're like, okay, maybe we can get on the second boat. Oh no, that was gone. But I was talking to Gale and I said, "You're not gonna believe this, but we might get on a Hallmark cruise ship." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, come on." That's too much. I said, "What? It would be a blast. We would have so much fun." She didn't want to go on the Hallmark cruise.
I was going to treat you to a little bit more of Gale's writing. I was going to ask Naomi Burton to come up and read for you. This is also based on a photo from Luke Swank. Sherry Flick did a workshop at the Carnegie. And Gale and I were in that together. And I think maybe that's where we met Jolene. And this piece is a result.
So this is Luke Swank, number 97, barren trees with split rail fence, 1940 to 43. I remember when Papa decided to fence the farm. The war had been on for about 1.5 years, and it was looking grim. Every night on the wireless, there were more reports of territory being lost to the enemy and the deaths of our boys. Papa was adamant that we needed to build a fence. "What do you want a fence for?" Mama asked. "Why do I need a reason to build a fence?" he asked. "Never needed one before." Mama looked at him, her eyes bruised from lack of sleep. "Split rail?" she asked. He nodded. She looked away, shaking her head. I wondered what good a split rail fence would do us if the Japs or Krauts marched up Mason Road or bombed us from the air. Nothing made sense anymore since the war began. Billy left for the front, and I had no one to ask when I didn't understand. Papa cut down what Mama called, under her breath, some perfectly good trees, and rolled the logs up near the barn so he could split them. He sharpened the axe, and when he wasn't tending the livestock, cleaning out the barn, or pulling weeds in the vegetable patches, he chopped up the wood into posts and rails. The curly cues of bark left behind dotted the yard like small dogs. When I was hanging out the wash, I named some of them and called them to me, which made Papa laugh. Mama just shook her head and yelled at me to quit fooling around and get the wash done. There were plenty more chores to do. Once the posts and rails were out, Papa called me to help him, even though I was a girl. Part of the war effort, Missy, he said, and handed me an old pair of Billy's overalls. I pulled them on and the legs ballooned like dresses. Together we stacked the newly cut wood on the wagon and took it out to the field. Then we measured the rails to set the posts at a proper distance from each other. When Papa passed me the first post, I gripped it with my hands, holding it as straight as I could, while he began to pound it in. I was always a strong girl, but the unfamiliar vibration of the hammer jangled my arms, and I dropped it. He told me to pick it up and then showed me how to hold it with a steadier grip. This time, it wasn't so bad. but I figured I'd be lucky if I could lift my arms the next day. We worked all morning, staking the short side of the field along the main road with only a short break for lunch. After lunch, we began adding the rails. Mid-afternoon, I told Papa I had to go to the outhouse, and he shook his head. You girls. He pointed to the large oak with its thick trunk. You know what Billy would do if he was here? He laughed. I walked towards the house thinking about Billy and wishing he was here. When I reached the turn into the farm lane, grimy with pigtails tucked up under Billy's old ball cap, I heard Mama cry out. I looked up and saw her staring at me, her hand to her mouth, with a piece of paper fluttering in the wind. Later at dinner, as we sat in silence, Mama refused to look at me, and I understood why. With my sandy brown hair and narrow face, I'd always favored Billy. From a distance, people thought we were twins. I'm sure she thought she saw his spirit making one last stop before going on to heaven, and was disappointed to see that it was only me.
We are starting to run out of time. Which I think is a good thing. And what I meant by that was that we've had so many wonderful people come up here to speak. But I think it's been a really wonderful assortment of humor and emotion and really good stories from every part of Gale's life. And I had so many different things to tell you all about today. Many of them I didn't need to say because somebody else picked it up and said it. And that's the thing. When Gale was with you, she was with you. We all didn't necessarily cross paths because she didn't have big bashes and get all of us together. There's one or two together unless geographically it made sense to get a group. I had wanted to tell you a little bit about what one of Gale's best features as a writer, in my opinion, is she was excellent at dialogue. And I think that actually would have made her an excellent playwright, and she did turn her hand to that as well. And she, in a piece that I was going to read you a little bit of to show you how good her dialogue was. It was the character Leah and her best friend Ronnie talking. I'm going to just read the tiniest piece because I have an ulterior motive for it. I'll set this up. So Leah has been, she's starting to work, she's partnered with a guy in a design company, and they're merging with a larger firm, and the head of that firm has come on to her very inappropriately, and she didn't know what to do, and she went to Leah for advice. I'm sorry, to Ronnie for advice. And then also wanted to just have some ideas about how to stand up to him. And Ronnie gave her excellent advice, and then this happened. Leah groaned inwardly. She couldn't imagine that Jared, another guy, would be one bit interested in what she had to say. Then she remembered Ronnie's advice to be helpful while not agreeing to anything that she thought was impossible. Do you think he'll be receptive to my assistance? She asked diplomatically. He wants a job, so he'll have to be, Buck stated. That's the guy. Let me know how the discussion goes. As Buck started to stand, Leah cleared her throat. Since my duties will extend beyond the scope of my current job description, I'd like to know what increase in my compensation you're proposing. Buck stared down at her for a moment, flush spreading from his neck upwards to his face. Are you asking me for a raise? Leah stuck to her guns. You're asking me to supervise 6 people and work more intensively with Jared along with all my current work. I believe I should be fairly compensated for the increased responsibilities. Buck started to respond, then hesitated and smiled slightly like he'd been gamed. Finally, he said in a measured tone, I'll increase your compensation on a short-term basis just until Jared returns. Work out what you'll be doing with him and see me before you leave work today. Leah left his office elated. Everything Ronnie suggested had worked, and Buck seemed to be back in a professional mode with her. Now she just needed to set things up with Jared. Her first thought was, what would Ronnie do? And that made her laugh out loud. Then she heard Ronnie's voice again in her head. Be professional in whatever you do. Don't lose Jared's tender ego. What would Ronnie do? So this was a big joke between Gale and me because back in the day when WWJD bracelets were very popular, I told her that I had changed mine to WWGD. What would Gale do? And I live my life that way quite a bit. And if it weren't for a very, very difficult customer service experience that I had with the company that I ordered bands, you all would have left here today with a WWGT bracelet. If everybody still wants one, they assure me that I could still have them, but I actually asked for a refund. And in lieu of that, I have photos instead. But I want you to keep that as a memento and think, because there is so much moving forward that Gale is such a perfect role model for. Politically, this is a really important year. What would Gale do? Afterwards, I will be distributing a reading list, some of the books that were on Gale's shelves. Everybody here should be checking out Heather Cox Richardson. I'm sure that Gale had told you about that, and if she hasn't, I would be really surprised, but I will definitely connect you to Heather Cox Richardson. And so I will be passing those out, and then the closing song, because Gale and I spent a lot of time actually talking about the archetypes in The Wizard of Oz, and how we each were all of those characters. That song seemed really important to do. Sharon's gonna talk. But I'm going to invite Sharon up here. She wanted to have the closing remarks. But while she's talking, we're going to pass out some bluebird puppets and rainbows. And this is the weird part. This is the part that's a little squonky. It's a little bit performative, and we're hoping that you'll participate. We'll have to raise that.
I'm a little taller than you. Just a little bit. That's good. Oh, I'm gonna cry, so I'm about to just get it out of the way. I asked Gray to come stand with me. Gray and Tammy are my family. And they've been by my side for years. I didn't know what I would do without them, to tell you the truth. But I also don't know what I would do without all of you. You know, so many of you have helped me over the last couple of weeks. Jerry has cooked for me, I don't know how many times, and fed me and nurtured me, and Michelle has helped me clean up the apartment and just do all the things that you have to do when this happens. But I really, really want to just talk for a minute about arrivals and departures, arrivals and departures. You know, a year ago, some of you might know this story and some of you might not, but I got on 23andMe because I wanted to check my health markers. And I did 23andMe. And as I'm looking at the friends and family, I discover that I have a half brother on my father's side that I knew nothing about. And I remember staring at the screen and saying, what? You know, I was like, what? And I called Gale. I said, okay, are you sitting down, sister? Because apparently we have a half brother we didn't know anything about. John arrived into our life about a year ago. And Gale has now departed. This is John. John is sitting right here. He drove down from Buffalo with my other brother Michael and brought them down to. And John's been a blessing because he arrived into our lives, and John's a very kind and gentle soul. And now I've had a departure. You know, I gained a brother, and now I've lost a sister. And I don't even know how to talk about that. I don't know how to even describe what that feels like, because the depth. I don't think I've even reached the depth of my grief yet, so I'm sure it'll hit me in several weeks. But I wanted John wanted to say a couple of things. I wanted to just have you come up real quick, because I know you wanted to say something. So just come
All right,
come on up and you can speak.
thank you. One of the disadvantages of being adopted is that you, even though it's adopted by very loving and nice parents, you have feel this disconnect where you always wonder, who am I? Where did I come from? And when I was growing up, I was told, New York State will not let you find that information. So I had settled in my mind that I would never know who my birth parents were or the circumstance of my birth. Through 23andMe and Ancestry.com, a little bit later, Governor Cuomo gave everybody who was adopted in New York State the real birth certificate, which was a good, bad thing. Good for some, unpleasant surprise for others. So when Sharon, I thought there was plenty of information about my birth mother's family, the big Irish conclave up in Boston. Didn't see anybody in Buffalo. They didn't connect how they got to Buffalo until later. But there was no trace of my birth father. And I used to call Mickey McGloin, our birth father, Mr. X. So I thought, I'm never going to find Mr. X. He's out there somewhere. And my older daughter, Sarah, is a real DNA sleuth. And she's gotten on the phone with Sharon, discussed all kinds of relatives, layers and layers of relatives. But ironically, I'm a doppelganger for Sharon and Gale's father. So, which I don't know, is that a good or bad thing? I don't know. He certainly lived a different kind of life than I did. But I'm very happy to have Sharon and Gale and Michael in my life. And what I liked about Gale, I would talk to Gale on the phone every 2 weeks on Sundays. And we would talk about all kinds of things. We would talk about my growing up, her growing up, talk about literature, art, politics. And the Sunday before Gale passed away, I had a long conversation with her. And then I was going to Florida on Tuesday. So I sent her a message and I said, I'm at the airport. I'm going to Florida. And she sent me a message back saying, have a good time. I'll talk to you soon. And that was the last time I ever communicated with her. And then Sharon called me 2 days later. And I was flabbergasted by what had happened. So I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad to have met a number of you here. And I'm very glad to be here and support Sharon. Sharon and Gale are wonderful women. And Michael is a wonderful guy, wherever he is right now, wandering around outside. But I just wanted to say a few words. Thank you.
One last comment. So I called my sister about 2 weeks before she was coming to visit me at Thanksgiving. I said, I have a question for you. She said, okay. I said, how would you feel about a Santa photo shoot when you come? And she went, I didn't think that was gonna be the question. I said, I know you didn't think that was gonna be the question, but how would you feel about a Santa photo shoot? I said, I think we should get our photos taken with Santa this year. And she went, okay, I'm in. So when she got to Kansas City, I had already scheduled it, and I said, it's scheduled for Sunday, we're going at noon, and we're getting our pictures taken with Santa, and that's what we did. And we laughed the entire time. When we walked in the door, Santa looked at us and he said, no crying. And we started laughing immediately. And the photographer's kind of looking around and I said, no kids, just you adults. And she said, oh, we get adults all the time. So, I mean, I'm so glad I did that because I have these pictures and it's one of my fondest memories of Gale, is that we just did that and the picture turned out so great. And we just laughed the entire time. So what I can say to you is go set up a photo set up with Santa with your siblings, because I'm telling you, you will laugh until you cry. It's so fun. And thank you guys all for coming today and honoring my sister. I mean, she's so beloved and I'm so happy that so many people came to this and thank you. And my godson. This is my godson Hunter right here, who is Gray and Tammy's middle child. And he flew in last night because he wanted to be here also, which was very touching.
If you have a bluebird and you hold them up, it will look uplifting. What can I tell you? Some of them have little wings that flap. When you're finished with them, take them with you, give them to a grandchild or somebody else starting out in life, or keep them yourself. But please enjoy them and make a beautiful flock. If you didn't get one,
So this is Somewhere Over the Rainbow in the slightly different, not exactly the Judy Garland, it's a little bit more like the Israel version, the Hawaiian, a little bit happier. I hope sing along from as soon as you feel comfortable, because this is supposed to be making a joyful noise. So, remember, weird, right? You all have a job to do. We have to have this place cleared by 3:30 or we're in big trouble. So, everybody pick up your own chair if you are able.
Not really.
Wait,
They wanna go.
okay. There's a photo of how the chairs need to be arranged. We will give you instructions. Most of the chairs are gonna be stacked up against this wall. I would say most of the ones that are on this side, you can probably just turn around and actually.
I also want to remind everybody that there are books and CDs out here that were Gale's. Help yourself to a book or as many CDs and books
There
as
are
you want.
books and CDs that belong to Gale that we would love for you to take home as a
Yes,
memento.
as a memento.
And there are also some Christmas ornaments as well. And there's little Gale head stickers if you'd like to take one home. We plotted where Gale traveled on the globe and what one of those do. And there are WWGD photos that Igor is handing out.
Barbara, I wanted to ask you something. So, you talked about with Arkansas, that, do you remember the letter that she wrote that year when she was going to go down there? And, you know, of course, I love all her holiday letters.
Yes.
But that one in particular was like the most mind-blowing because of two things she said. One was a joke about Bill Clinton. Can you remember that one? I still laugh about that.
Yeah.
And the second one was that her saying, I didn't know you at all.
Right.
As long as you have a good friend. But the other one was she said, I decided to get out of my own way. Remember her saying that?
Oh, yeah.
And that was like mind-blowing and like a piece of wisdom that I carried with me forever. So without your luring her there, I never would have had that joy.
I somewhat learned, but what I didn't do for the whole thing was to say that when she came down to visit us for the Thanksgiving in 1923, in a 4-day trip, she got a job, a place to live, and a boyfriend.
You know, she was like gifted, lucky. You name it. She was a different kind of person.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy to meet you.
Oh, I'm happy to meet you now, Tina.
Tina.